Greetings, everyone! It is I, Countess Naravan Chekhovin. I don't need my headphones on. Your Lord and Emperor here at the Chekhovin Empire. I sit so much time at the computer, I forget that I don't need those on for stuff like this. But welcome! It is time for discussing more tabletop. Not the Discussing Tabletop show, but me talking about tabletop for you to listen to. And we're diving back into the world of Golarion, the Pathfinder campaign setting. Yeah. It's another day for us to go over the Gazetteer. I can spell it out, sort of. Can I say it? I could have mispronounced so many things today. It's another day of me mispronouncing anything. But we're... already off to a great start. But we're going to be introduced to Absalom today, which is a very important metropolis/city-state/island nation that we are going to dive deep into. So... let us begin. Let's kind of go over this, because I can kind of go over some of the basic information about some of the books that would be important for this. So the first one to talk about is Absalom, the City of Lost Omens. Now, I don't particularly own this book, but the website I have says that I'm using the Pathfinder Wikipedia, which has some of this information uploaded. So there is some information that has been updated since this. I'm going to try to keep some of the basics, and I'm going to mention where information from this book has come in that particularly changes some stuff, so you might want to look directly into this book for updates. It's just an unfortunate thing that I've not been able to acquire this PDF yet. I don't have all the second edition books. I have a lot of first edition books, but not all the second edition books. Some books that I do have, which do have some information I was able to reference, is the campaign setting, the original one from 3.5. This gave us the basics of Golarion and introduced it to us. And of course, the Guide to Absalom, which is another one from during the Pathfinder era. These three books are the ones that would be best to reference. The other two are the ones that I reference in particular for research for this, combined with using the Pathfinder Wikipedia as a overview. So I will add things in as I need from the books as we will go through these. Alright, so I put this picture up here because when we're getting started here, it has a nice thing that you can probably see here. Actually, I would probably do this version of it because it's a little bit better. Hey, there's Absalom. That's kind of like it's showing exactly where it is in position to these three continents, because there are three continents here. Avastia is in the north, Garund is in the south, and to the east is, I can't remember the name of the continent ever. I have to look that up. I can check the Golarion world map. Thank you, book Golarion world map. Sorry, I want to give the proper name of that continent, if I would remember off the top of my head. Khazmaron. There we go, Khazmaron. Thank you, world map. So it finds itself at a position that one of the reasons that Absalom is so important is strategically one of the best locations in their inner sea, and being in this position between three of the main continents, because most of the Golarion world civilizations come from 4 different continents, and I've mentioned 3 of them. The last continent being, of course, TNZ, which is over farther to the east even then. But the ruined continent of Aslant doesn't really have a lot, and then Arcadia and Sarasad have some civilization, but they are not as well settled or developed as any of these 4 continents here. And being kind of the center of a lot of them makes Absalom a very strategic position. And again, another reason why it's nicknamed the city at the center of the world. Hence why I said it there as part of the title, because that's what it's known as. And so Absalom has had this position for nearly 4,000 years. Its metropolis size, it is the largest city in all of Golarion. The general population is over 300,000 people, which, again, for a Renaissance level kind of city, and one in a world where, we had a big apocalypse, it's a big city. It's a city where, if I would tell you you could find individuals who are level 20, you would not bat your ears. Because it is a city that, materially would be level 20. um, it's got other nicknames to the city, too. The Patrick City, City of Buried Treasures, Jewel of the Inner Sea. It's about 62% human, 11% halfling, 8% half-elf, 7% gnome, 5% dwarf, 2% elf, 1% goblin, 1% half-orc, and 3% of just other ancestries in general. It has had a major influence on the entire Inner Sea and the actual planet of Glarion pretty majorly. Its strategic position is important for both commercial and military endeavors in the entire region, and it is actually the ascension site of 4 deities. The last thing about it that's very important is the last Aslanti god, Erodin, was supposedly the being that founded the city. And again, another reason to think this place is important is the current passage of time. Whenever I mention it, I say it's AR. What is AR? Absalom Reckoning. So the current time period is measured by something directly mentioning Absalom. Yeah. You can't get beyond that very easily. Anyway, let's talk a little bit more about Absalom, and let's talk about, of course, let's start with the island that it's on, Korthos. So, we'll put a little picture. That's a basic, a simple rendition of Korthos with its 3 major settlements. Of course, these settlements here that are mentioned, Dobiel and Escadar, are smaller settlements under Absalom control, but we're going to talk about the island itself for a moment first, and any kind of major geographical areas on said island, so you kind of know about it. So, the Isle of Korthos is where the city is located, on the southern eastern edge of this. Korthos, which means Starstone Island in the Azanti language, is taken up only by a piece of Absalom. The remaining land is under the control of Absalom, and so are the smaller settlements, of course, which there are a number of small villages and settlements we'll talk about. But a lot of land is technically unpopulated. The thing is, there are areas that do have wreckage of people. A lot of this unpopulated land has ruined siege gentlements, battlements of countless assaults on the city's impenetrable walls. The Cairnlands is one of the major areas around that. When we talk about the Cairnlands, we've had 4,000 years of basically everybody trying to take over Absalom. Whatever's left over from that is here. And there are things like the Red Redoubt of Karamos, the El Raja Key, the Pyramid of the Dog, which is located outside of Puddles, the Spire of Nex, just 10 miles north of Absalom. These are all locations in the Cairnlands you could probably check out and have adventures in. So there's Rotting Relics of Lore, Stone Barrows, Shallow Graves, makeshift tombs for those that fell in battle and not on their native soils, treasures left over from a lot of these battles, so adventurers and explorers could go there. But because a lot of people died in a lot of these areas, you also end to have some undead, so treasure, undead, exploring these things, they're all things you could do. And these different things are pretty interesting. Yeah. So a lot of these things I mentioned are gigantic siege engines left behind. Certainly the Spire of Nex is a siege castle created by the Archmage Nex. And it is pretty insane, because it's also a mile high. Magical siege tower that was created to try to invade the city. Yeah, all these things are pretty insane and still left over there. Basically abandoned, controlled by undead or monstrosities left over. Cairnlands is not a very pleasant place, but it is a major area. The center of the isle is, of course, Korthos Mount, which is the kind of core of the island. The image here that I've kind of got up shows the kind of brown area where the mountain is in the center. It's actually also the area that has the most jagged and highest peaks in the world. They're forested at lower altitudes, barren and icy at their peaks. Some of them are volcanic. The mountain range is very difficult to pass through, so most people just go around it, and those that do kind of manage to explore or mine it, there are rare metals and gemstones that are important here, that can be found in the Korthos Mounts. So it's another reason that makes the island and Absalom very powerful. They have control of the various mines that are here. And this area is covering about 3,000 square miles. So this is a really big area. The foothills, again, they're a little fertile, forested, mountain alpines. There's farms, ranches, mining settlements, and stuff like that. And the highest peak in the mountains is Arzalant Mox, which reaches 26,000 feet in height. Which, to compare, Mount Everest, our highest mountain in the world, is 29,000 feet in height, about. So it's a little short. It's about 3,000 feet shorter than Mount Everest, but there is the highest mountain in all of, well, pretty much one of the highest mountain ranges in the world, in Galarian. One of the highest mountains. Anyway, so the Korthos Mountains were raised with the rest of the island when Eredin raised a starstone from the Inner Sea. The mountains have been kind of relatively ignored. Centaurs, Minotaurs, and Harpies that were brought to the island in an attempt to conquer Absalom basically fled there after the army was defeated and have settled in the various ranges of the mountains. So they've kind of scattered into tribes and communities. They've got warlords that kind of create their groups there. And the last warlord that was in this area was Marijex Steel Eyes, a powerful dragon. Let me figure out what kind of dragon. So if you would visit the mountain ranges at the center of the isle, an amethyst-colored scaled dragon. So, yeah. You might meet Minotaurs, Harpies, or Centaurs. And they're always battling each other, but there's also Drakes, Wyverns, and Dragons that also like the place because it's out of the way. And, the Harpies that worship, the ice demon-worshipping ones, like, there's also demon-worshipping there because of Minotaurs, too. Baphomet, Pazuzu are often worshipped in various places, too. And, you know. Also, teleportation magic in the Korthos magic is unreliable. Not know why. No one knows really why that's true. Anyway. So that is the Korthos Mountains, the center of it. Directly north and pretty far to the west of Absalom stretches a primordial woodlands known as the Immerwood. Wood harvest there fuels the logging trade that helps sustain the isle, and centering the town itself is a small town, Meveron, which we will talk about Meveron. Yep. So basically, it was in one era that Eredin's rising of the island basically created it, and that's why the island's been here since then. We'll talk about, you know, and oh yeah, other creatures that live on the island. There is rumors of a winged camel race on the north end of the island that might be very rare. Axebeaks and camels are another thing that people use on the island. Horses, unfortunately, aren't there because the centaurs and the harpies. Harpies like to eat the horses more than the camels or axebeaks, and centaurs find them as invaders. So keeps them away. The Immerwood, though, another going on a bit about that, is The intersections of it, the emanations of the Tyrant's Grasp twist the trees. We'll talk about the Tyrant's Grasp in a minute. There are some other settlements, of course, there. Some mines and fortresses. Some are abandoned, some are active. The First Eagle's garrison patrols the tribes there. And the Centaur tribes that actually settled in the Immerwood rather than the mountains are more hospitable to humans than those that live in the Scrape, basically the bottoms of the mountain ranges. There still are some tensions with Absalom. I mean, there was the entire fact that their people were kind of maybe either forced or enslaved or bought up or something. Whatever reason that their ancestors came to invade the city, they failed and lived here then, and so sort of like a weird feelings probably after that. And there are some strange fae and large carnivorous plants in the area. Well, with Tyrant's Grasp, you get undead creatures and cults affiliated with the Whispering Way, a major undead worshipping cult there. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the Immerwood. Let's talk about some of the other geographical features that we might find important. Of course, you're on the Inner Sea. That's an important thing to mention. That it's the main ocean right there. The Deluge River is an important one. It flows on the island of Colchos from the foothills of the mountains through the Immerwood in the east-southeast towards Minerva, and then it meets the Inner Sea at the town of Dobiel. So that is a major river there that you would find. And the Red Bridge is the major crossing point, and there's a pearl market there, the Red Bridge Pearl Market, that if you want to check out in Dobiel. So this is kind of like on the northwest side of the island. Do you see? You wouldn't see my mouse if I went over it. Dunmire is a vast bog north of the Korthos Mountains, with thick fogs, waters that are rarely more than a knee deep, filth, disease, kobolds, lizard folk, hags, and criminals make their time here. It's on the other side of the mountain from Absalon, so I mean it does keep things relatively connected differently. There are some strange environmental disturbances known as welt that grow in Dunmire's western border, and kind of it expands westerly each year. The First Guards Eagle Garrison doesn't patrol the area. They tried to for some time period. It's pretty much the only area in the entire island that's outside of the direct control of Absalom because of that. But there is a permanent settlement there, Piers End, which sits on a deep harbor and has inexpensive ferries to the nearby island of Escadar, for those that can cross the bog. And let's talk about the place on Escadar, which Escadar is on the island of Erin to the north. The island has been a special place set aside from mortals ever since Eredin, as a refuge for him and his closest followers during the Age of Enthronement. There's a lot of stories about that. Escadar is the largest settlement on the island and headquarters of Absalom's navy. And there's also Aberton, a small inhabited location of less than 1,000, and one of the Aeon Towers, an Aeon Tower constructed by Eredin himself. Its Aeon norm now failing like others, which I will show off an Aeon Tower a little later, as I do have a image of it. There's another tall Smile Island, Pariol Island, that's owned by the Bakros family, one of the Altheo Islands, basically near the island there. Pilot Island is another small island that has the Absalom lighthouse. It's at the center of the Absalom the flotsam graveyard of Absalom, which we will also talk about the flotsam graveyard of Absalom. That is actually one of the city districts. The Scrape, of course, as I mentioned, is actually a stony desert on the northeastern part of the island. Still part of the domain there. It's kind of where a lot of the Minotaurs kind of settled in there. The Scrape is a pretty dangerous place connected with the mountains. But there are some places of interest there. And then there's also on the western side of the island is the Swardlands, Sward, S-W-A-R-D, which is the breadbasket of Absalom. giving their fertility to the 4 Aeon Towers and their Aeon Orbs that have magically sustained the flora since Eridan raised the island. Since Eridan's death, 2 of the towers have failed and diminished their power. The Aeon Orb of the Marsh Tower was stolen a decade ago, while the Old Forest Tower is rapidly declining in efficiency. And so it's unknown if this can endure or the agriculture in this area will fail. So that's kind of a disaster that these towers are failing. And this is near Dunmire, which is another... the swamplands. So it connects up with Dunmire, who's approaching into their area. Might be connected to that. Tyrant's Grasp is a blasted wasteland stretching near 15 miles across in the Karnlands and the southeast Isle of Korthos near Absalom. This is where the Whispering Tyrant was defeated in 4719, resulting in a magical explosion, wrenched his right hand from his wrist and embedded it within the land itself. Whispering Way cultists flock to the Tyrant's Grasp, seeing it as likely breachhead where their leader can reclaim his hand and the Starstone. 3 attempts have been thwarted by the First Guard, and their numbers continue to grow. Undead creatures are in the area. This is a leftover from a Pathfinder 1st Edition Adventure Path, Tyrant's Grasp, if you want to check that out. The Tyrant's Grasp Adventure Path led to this here. This was, I think, the last adventure path that was in the Pathfinder 1st Edition timeline. So this happened in 4719. So this would have been for our time period, because it's 4722, or sorry, 2723 in the Galarian time periods 4 years ago. Again, if you want to compare now to then, it's just basically the 47 instead of our 20 and then the actual year. They're 270 or 2,700 years ahead of us in a calendar. But if you're also talking technicalities, it's actually like around the post-World War I era right now, probably. If we compare it, if you'd actually teleport to Earth, because one of the adventure paths back during the 2010s when it came out was you teleported to World War I Russia during it. So, yes. There's your timelines for you, just related to that. But, yes, there's a leftover from the defeat of the Whispering Tyrant who's still around. He survived that. He's just not as good of shape. Alright, well, we've talked about some of the geography of the land. Let's talk about and look at the island here and talk about the smaller settlements that are here and talk about some of the major smaller settlements you should know about on the island. Because these are basically the other holdings in the island. I've basically mentioned a few of them by name, but I haven't really dived deep in any of them. So let's do that now so you get an understanding of the places to visit. And I will mention the 2 that were shown earlier are some of the more important ones, which are, of course, Dobiel and Escadar. So when I talk about those are the more powerful settlements that are under. But all of these settlements are technically under Absalom's control. These are other smaller places on the island that are within their area. There's Aberton on the island of Erin, so that island in the north. It's a kind of declining town in the eastern part of it. A small ranching family. Still worships Abadar, though Gozreth is kind of there. The farms and ranches are producing less. The citizens are leaving a lot of time. So it's a city that's kind of disappearing, probably after the influence of, I don't know, a major deity disappearing. Just southeast of Tyrant's Grasp, and if you were going to visit that, you'd go to Bosco on the east coast. Not much is known about that, other than it exists there. Copperwood is another one. It's in the northeast of Absalom, just outside the city walls, and a lot of laborers, tradesmen, and domestic servants actually live here. It was a tent city of unskilled laborers that could not afford the city proper, and as conditions improved, they became a town outright. So the townspeople here are Copperheads. So basically, it's like a bunch of people tried to move in, couldn't really get into the city because of some of the rules of the city, and afterwards they just settled their own town. When the wizard Karamos attacked in 3637, they were the first to be attacked there. Copper was nearly destroyed during the fighting, but the siege was thrown away. Patrolling members of the Star Watch take care of them because they are considered a part of Absalom in a way. The thing is, during extended conflicts, the citizens of the city will and are allowed to withdraw into Absalom's city walls. So these gigantic walls which protect the metropolis and have kept sieges away, they're outside of it, but they can move in. Many are servants that work in the Petal District and travel back and forth daily through the Kin Gate. Ex-slaves also live here since Lord Gear abolished the practice in 4717. So, again, I'll talk about Lord Gear when I talk about the politics, but it's the current, basically, ruler of Absalom, abolished slavery in the entire city, which slavery had, I'll talk about that, it has had a long history with Absalom in and off, and it hasn't always been that popular. It's effectively fully abolished as of, what would be 6 years ago in the city. And oftentimes, if you're visiting Absalom, you might hire people from that town as porters or guides. So Copperwood is an actually important town. To the southeast of Absalom is Dawnfoot. It's between the city walls surrounding the Principal Quarter and Star Watch Keep. Basically, it's a kind of place where the members of the Star Watch, who live outside the city because of an agreement with the First Guard, have kind of grown into their own thing with military. It's a military community for this other group that does work protect Absalom and the island. Let's talk about Dobio, because I mentioned it was one of the major two settlements in there. It's still a small settlement in comparison to Absalom, by far. It is minuscule. It's a large town at most. It's not as large as Escadar, which is on the island on the northeast coast. It's an important rule because of commercial and political affairs with the city. It's on the west coast of the Isle, and a mighty siege tower rests the flooded port city of Dobio. It's where once a mighty siege town. So this wasn't once a big siege town, and now it's just the flooded port of Dobio. Its inner harbor is protected by a giant mage of shipwrecked war barges, crumbling walls, hat-hearted jetties of iron and wood. Larger trading vessels and warships can't enter the harbor itself. The deeper waters of the bay are often crowded with ships at anchor. Inside the maze lies a wide bay called the Shallows. Small rowboats, flat-bottomed cargo vessels find safe passages here. It flows into a series of stone and wood walkways which stretch below the city, possessing various docks, bunkers called the underdocks. Most of the town is suspended on pylons above the underdocks and hangs precariously on a rocky shore off the bay. So it's a very interesting town. The shipwrecks and debris that protect Dobio's harbor from pirates and sea monsters basically are a imitation of Absalom's flotsam graveyard. Three major districts are the Bristles District, the Claw District, the Snout District. Snout District being home of the middle-class, old families, traders, and artisans. Bristles District being the low-rate inns, markets, taverns, warehouses, and poor family homes. Shipbuilders and gillmen also operate in that area. And the Claw District, it's the inland that rarely... It's not a place that's really referred to fondly. Old Dobian families maintain camps here, and explorers make that the last stop before they explore the island. This is a bustling train town contained by the merchant lords of the Korthos Consortium, which oversees much of the Absalom's mining, farming, trapping, and fishing industry. So, basically the port of choice for that. But smugglers and food merchants prefer that over Absalom because it's, Absalom has stiff harbor taxes, better law enforcement, and its own criminal element. So, if you want to smuggle onto the island, this is a much better place to go to. The place began more as a fishing village and oyster farming for pearls gathering. Also, it provides them to the Arcanium, which is the Absalom School of Magic, but also exports them throughout the Inner Sea region. So pearls are still really important there. Sky metals, harvested from the hills surrounding the area or on the ocean floor, are traded by Low Aslanti, are often higher price for imports. So sky metal can be found here. The Gilman, basically, another term for them. And other materials are transported down the Deluge River, are traded out of here very oftentimes. The government is known as the Teriarch. It's appointed by the Grand Council of Absalom. The current one is Lord Avid of House Aronson, basically, who's a childhood friend and now bitter rival of the former Primarch of the place. Hello, Lord Gear. Which they have an acting Primarch now, I will talk about, since 2017. So basically, just someone put in charge of the city. So, it's an important town, though. There is, for other towns, you might visit Eilon on the western coast, near the Sward Lands. And let's talk about Escadar, which is, I mentioned, the primary base of Absalom's naval operations, where their navy is housed. It's on island of Iran to the north of Korthos, and it's a harbor city that has been around for about 600 years. And it was Absalom's government near the existing site of St. Saranax, which was a training academy and library of the Knights of the Aeon Star. It was named after a hero of the Pirate Siege. It served as the first shipyard and warehouse to aid Absalom against naval blockades, but has grown into its own thing. So originally, if there was a naval blockade, they'd be the first to assist against it originally, but now it's grown into its own major naval base. It's governed by a lesser council, retired ship council captains, young members of Absalom's Grand Council, and they have been known to grant letters of marquises to civilian ships to continue fighting piracies around the island of Korthos itself. So, if you would need to figure out where Absalom's navy is, the harbor hoards scores of warships, basically. It's a naval reserve in times of siege, for one thing, and also functions as a major military force out of this town in the entire Inner Sea. It does stretch down to the Obari Ocean as need be, and pirates are the main thing they fight against. Certainly if someone would come to siege or come to war, they'd be their thing, but the city itself remains a lot of neutral, so pirates are the main issue, or defending their homes. And the main embassy with the Gilman, or the Low Aslanti, happens here. It's housed in the House of the Cresting Waves, also known as the Wet House. So, again, if you want to connect up with an emissary with these people, that's the location. Flesk is on the island of Korthos, near Absalom. It's another place to visit. Galazur is a dwarven mining settlement on the south coast of the island. Hazrak is a Minotaur settlement in the Red Hills, which they're tracing their origin back to the first siege of Absalom in 23 AR. The Minotaur warlord Vordani Voon brought thousands of his kind to the Brazen Arch to lay siege to it. Arid himself destroyed it. And they have this small city there, but they continue to be an aggressor to the rest of the island from their position. Carrick, the largest town in the Sward Lands, has a mayor and a dockmaster appointed by the Grand Council from important political allies. Basically sends stuff down the river, is the best way to say it. So it's farmers, investors in the area. It's basically taking things from the area, trade with the other areas of the island. Yeah. Meveron is near the Immerwood. It's probably the center of the lumber industry, and transports a lot to down the Deluge River to Dobiel, or overland to Otari. Speaking of Otari, which was on the which is on the map here. Oh, I could see the other map. I think pointed out Otari better. Gotta click on the right maps for these things. Oh no, the Otari doesn't show up. That's better on that. Oh, it's over there. It's south of the Amberwood. Hankyu map. I had to look at it bigger. It's halfway between Absalom and Dobiel. It's part of the. It's the head of the Bay of the Inner Sea. It's a quiet settlement. Retired pathfinders like the place. Some open businesses there. It is important to the economy of Absalom. It's where a lot of the lumber trade does happen out of there too, and lumber's traded to a lot of the Inner Sea region. There's a Dawnfire. There's the Dawnfire Library, Temple of Serenray there, and old stories and books there, run by retired pathfinders. But basically, it has a huge connection to the Pathfinder Society, and honestly, probably if there was an issue that came up, the large amount of former Pathfinder Society members, aka former adventurers who have higher levels than average, live there. So, something happens in Otori. No one wants to mess with Otori. Who wants to mess with a bunch of ragtag adventurers who would pick up to defend their home at the drop of a hat? And probably many of them ranging from level 5 to 15, honestly. Kick your ass. That's retired adventurers for you. You know? Don't want to deal with that. Some of them are lower levels, but some of them get, some of them gained levels on their adventure. Some of them didn't, Retired members of the Pathfinder. Pier's End, as I talked about it, is in the Dunmire. It's kind of a natural shore, and it does connect up with across the waters to the Neth, to Exgadar. Again, like if you were just trying to look for a simple ferry, it's the best place to go to, but you've got to cross the Dunmire. But it's a great place for adventurers to step up, resupply, got a warm in, cheap ferries and stuff like that. Very popular that way. Again, it's a very difficult overland journey, so they don't really have a lot of economy, but they welcome people. With their incredibly small population, they still have an important role. Shoreline is a small town located just outside the walls of Absalom, directly west of the Puddles district. It basically was originally for those that worked at the sea, got a lot of docks and fisheries. Some of the more frigate businesses in Absalom are actually put there, so a lot of the tanneries and breweries that have a lot of smell that probably aren't as welcome in the city proper, most of them find themselves in Shoreline. So there's artisans and laborers that kind of live here too. The place tends to be a little bit poorer, but again, they're mostly dry, unlike the Puddles. And the siege castle called the Pyramid of the Dog is located on a beach just south of the shoreline, which was a big siege engine. And a gang controls it. So, Westerhold is the richest of the outlying towns, where members of the wealthiest families of Absalom hold small estates in Westerhold. Also, a large number of dwarven inhabitants and trustee stables. So if you're ever going to go to somewhere very wealthy and upscale, Westerhold. And then finally, the last major settlement here is Willowside, which is an old reclusive town on the north coast. It suffers from the Welt in recent years. It's named after the willow trees that separate the Dunmire from the forest that once surrounded the town until the Welt began, which is the Dunmire spreading, kind of. It's stormy in comparison to many other towns on the island. So they have a lot of protection against rain there. And they've elected mayor, serves until death and to resignation, the first one being Estella Vandy. So yeah, the mayor's elected, you serve until you either resign or you die. So yeah. It's a small, peaceful place you might need to visit too if you're ever on Absalom proper. Alright, let's dive into the city of Absalom itself. Certainly I do want to talk about the history of it, but we are still talking about You can still now see where Dawnfort, Pilot Island, Shoreline, Westerhold is. I want to be on... Is this image better? We don't need it. We can keep the other one here. It doesn't crop it too much. It's fine. The Aslanti Keep and Pilot Island are a little cropped off, along with Starwatch Keep down there at the bottom. But they're there. We'll keep this one because it's a little zoomed in. It's nicer that way. So let's talk about Absalom proper, because there's a bunch of city districts, and honestly, we're talking about a city nation. It is a city-state of a huge size. So, it can't really function as a city unit as a whole. So, the division between the districts is kind of something that's happened, and the district is almost like its own little city within the major city itself, because of the population and atmosphere. Each district has its own council that runs the day-to-day affairs. There are places like the high-class havens from the Petal and Ivory districts to the dangerous and destitute places like the Puddles and the Precipice quarters. Usually a lot of these neighborhoods run the gamut of both economic and social spectra. So, like, you don't have just one poor district or one expensive district. It just is maybe much more known for the people of those. Austere monuments for historical or spiritual significance draw thousands of people to places like the Aslanti Keep, the Ascendant Court, and the Wise Quarter on a daily basis. So let's talk about these different quarters and kind of give some basic information on them so you know the city districts of Absalom, if you're ever visiting it. So, effectively, it's 14 smaller districts that each have their own district courts, which does make an important difference in how they are basically managed. And there is an overall government to the city, which we will talk about when we talk about the government of the city. But generally speaking, each of these takes care of themselves. The first off is the Ascendant Court, which is the religious center of Absalom. Most of the city's temples are here, and the Starstone Cathedral is located there. It is located physically at the center of Absalom and is a hub between many of the other districts. All roads in the Absalom Court lead to the Starstone. So much, it's sort of like, with the city at the center of the world, it is even much so at the center of the world. That's the best way to describe it. Here, let's just... I'll throw this image here you can see for a second when we talk about that. Yep, there you go. We'll go back to the other one in it. But we can have that there to enjoy that one. But that is the Starstone Citadel at the center of the Ascendant Court. So it is an important place because the ascension of 4 gods happened at this location here. 4 people became gods here because of the Starstone. Yeah. It's also known for its Avenue of the Hopeful, the God Market, and the Cellist Embassy, house in the former Temple of Eridan, and the Black Mask, a costume shop that transforms into a Temple of Norgabur at night. The Avenue of the Hopeful and God's Market. The Avenue of the Hopeful is a winding market street that if you kind of want to check it out around the Test of the Starstone and learn about things, it's a place way to go. A lot of major religious paraphernalia there. God's Market being basically the end-all be-all at religious paraphernalia you'd need for pretty much anything. Holy waters, holy symbols, waters, texts, clothing, scrolls, potions, other magic items, service of moneylenders, silver craftsmen for jewelers. Evil deity stuff tend to be sold on the black market and not publicly available, but most deities you can find a representation of. And some evil deities can find their way there because they're more acceptable, aka something like Asmodeus would probably find something there. So the Petal District is the east, Coins to the south, Ivory and Foreign District to the west, Wise Quarter and Aslanti Keep to the north. And the massive rock pillar where the Starstone sits is just, with a seemingly bottomless chasm surrounding it, is the center of this thing. 4 bridges connect to the temple. Iomedae, Cade and Kalen, 3 of the bridges of the four that are connected are named for the gods that ascended. Iomedae, Cayden Cailean, Norgobur. All mortals that ascended to divinity who passed the test of the Starstone. The fourth bridge is for Aradun, who's disappeared but was destroyed in an earthquake in 4698. The earthquake, which I'll talk about when I talk about the history of the city, which damaged a lot of it and has not been repaired since. The Chamber of Ecclesials is the district council that rules here, and Synodi of the Thousand Poems is the current nomarch and representative of all the major temples in the district. The nomarch is rarely a member of any of the district churches, and is basically a Voldrani sage, so someone that is non-denominational, basically. Non-religious based, not a specific religion based. So the council is oftentimes dealing with holy day celebrations, weddings, funerals, religious observances. The low council basically it performs much of the district's main, and the low council I'll talk about is like the lower governing bodies of a lot of these districts. All of them have it. The Grey Cloaks of the Ascendant Court's District Guard. They consist only of declared non-believers who reject the status of the gods as any other than powerful entities unworthy of worship. So that's the important part about the Grey Cloaks that protect the Ascendant's court. They are non-denominational. They've basically declared, each of themselves has declared that the gods are just powerful entities and not worthy of worship. So, major temples are like Sarenrae's Temple of the Shining Star, the Pleasure Salon of Callistre, Cayden's Hall, Blackfinger's Temple, the Seven Churches, and the Cathedral of Fallen honors, those that, the Cathedral of Fallen, which honors those that attempt and fail to test the Starstone. So you get plenty of pilgrims and zealots in the Ascendant Court, which we'll kind of go back here to the other image. There we go, we're back here. That was the Ascendant Court. This is going to take a little bit of time. I'll try to speed this up a little bit, because I don't want to go more than 2 hours, honestly. I gotta do a couple things. Azlanti Keep is a major fortification, and it's basically large enough to kind of be a city district in its own right. It is the keep of the... It's the home of the First Guard, the major military of Absalon's military. So, yeah, I guess that's all about that one that we can kind of go over too. And a retired captain, Winslow Starborn, holds the district seat on the Grand Council. Effectively, they're a lot simpler. They're a military area of the city, so they keep it very simple. The Coins is the main commercial district, where most goods are for sale any time of the day. It was the location of the controversial slave pits of Absalom, also known as Misery Row. And that, of course, the Fiend Flesh Siege of 4717 was what kind of ended that. Where demonic and undead forces under the command of Thurl attacked the city. And basically any slave that helped with the battle got freedom, and afterwards that's when the Ground Council outlawed slavery in the city. So the place there, Misery Row, still is not a great place, because it has this, like... It's a place where, certainly, now that slavery is abolished in the city, great, but, it used to be filled with slave traders day and night, and, now it's, 6 years outside of it being there, and certainly place is not great anymore still. It hasn't really improved, Misery Row. But it is in the Coins. There's a major location there. But let's talk about the Coins. That's just going a little bit in the southern area of the Coins. It resides just north of the city's docks, and most trade, both illegal and legal, that occurs with the Absalom happens here. A lot of illicit drugs and contraband do happen here because of it. It does have some reputation for a lot of these things because there are a lot of trade, both legal and legal. There are some more respectable areas, Mongrel's Mart and Grand Bazaar, and the potential profit from a lot of the more profitable areas outweighs the unlawful problems that happen. But money changing hands a lot, can happen. And the Coins has more murders than any other district, save for the Puddles, which we'll talk about. Taverns are open 24/7. Magical and natural illumination keeping Marcus open both day and night. Time callers shout out the hour every hour on the street. The nomarch of the district is Melina of House Arson. And the district council is the Coin Council. Until slavery was abolished, there was a slave overseer on the council. Not anymore. They got rid of that. The Coin District's guard is known as the Token Guard, and takes a kind of lenient view on crime. They respond to offenses when paid to do so by private concern or the attentions of the Primarch. They usually arrest everybody in the scene, hold them for disturbing the peace in the bail house until someone pays for their release. The Primarch being the major government of the Absalom. So it's an interesting place to visit, but certainly you can get a lot of trade there. The Mongrel's Market is the perishable item district, and the Grand Bazaar is where the upstanding place you're going to pretty much find everything. You can also go to the Red Silk Route, market where desires of the flesh are satiated. The Staunchy Wench and a massive meat hall in the Grand Bazaar. Hackamore House, the carriage shop, run by a centaur and her shape-shifting mate. The Eternal Shackle, an arched monument under which a magical fire burns. The Temple of Lost Coins, headquarter of the Forthright Men, the Thieves Guild in the Coins, the largest one. So those are all really pleasant places you can go to and visit for so many reasons. Anyway, let's talk about the docks. It's the harborfront district of Absalom. Ships from all over Golarion happen there. The Flotsam Graveyard, the underwater fortifications of sunken ships, guards the entrance to the harbor, while the Rave Riders patrol the waterline, which are the Hippocampus-mounted light cavalry, which protects the harbor. Ride Hippocampuses. My God, I just cannot pronounce anything today. But they are trained from the Guildmen of Escadar, on the island of Erin. Occasionally, Guildmen join the company, but it's rare, or Low Aslanti, I should say. Anyway, so the docks. It's kind of both the physical area and a district. That's the kind of thing about the docks. It's both of those things at the same time. And we can throw up an image of the docks here. That pop up? It did. Wonderful. There's an image of the docks there to give you some pictures. I forgot to set up some of these specific regions there. Most travelers arrive to Aslan by ship, of course, and this is the first place you see. Hundreds of maritime vessels arrive and depart the docks every day, and it's a bustling where longshoremen constantly load and unload cargo from everywhere. From the market here, from everywhere place in the world. It's kind of rough, but the harbor guard is the ones that protect it. They tend to turn a blind eye to many brawls, as long as they don't get out of hand. It's a rough place. There's a lot of cheap waterside brothels and taverns. It's governed by a district council, the Dock Council, headquartered in Crestwatch, one of the 10 tallest buildings in the city. The current non-mark is the Lord Archlich, House Drez. I cannot pronounce this for the lot of me, these words. So, there are 2 world-class shipyards here, the Devil's Own and the Sea King's Shipyard. The largest crane in the world here, the Beast, is on the Long Pier. The Grog Pit is the most notorious tavern and flophouse on all of the docks. So if you want to go to a really great place, go to the Grog Pit. It's going to be darn dark and dirty. But if you're an adventurer, it's a hell of a place to visit. So yeah. That is the docks for you. Anyway. Let's talk about Eastgate. It's sort of the middle-class residential district. It's got craftspeople, workers from other districts, minor nobles, and the like. The Azarketi, the Gilmen, the Azarkati, also known as the Gilmen, have an enclave in Giltown in the district. So that's basically, it's located behind a cheap row of housing for the district watch, laborers, and clerks, and it's a place that, if you want to go check in with the guild town and that, it's kind of secluded out of the way, but it's a section of their population is their kind of thing in the city. Anyway, it's kind of, it's surrounded to the north by the Petal District, Coins to the west, and Precipice Quarter to the south. Most of it is residential. The working class commute to other parts of the city for employment, because that can take a while. That can be up to 2 hours. The city is quiet, orderly. Snowmark is Lord Ayunga of House Akesh, who's also the captain of the local guard. Oh, God, there was something I should have mentioned, the size of Absalom, because I didn't mention that when we're talking about this. It stretches 7 miles from Starwatch Keep to Aslanti Keep, basically, north to south, and more than 5 miles from West Gates to East Gates. And has 3 times as many residents as the Chelaxian capital, which is another major city in the world. So, yes, I forgot to mention those things there. The tallest building in Eastgate is Blue Tower, home of the Winged Sandals, a dedicated order of messengers. And other places is the Grand Holt, largest tree in the island of Korthos. It's located in the Green Ridge neighborhood of Eastgate. It's an enormous fig tree that spans many city blocks. So it is a big old tree. Do I have a picture of the big old tree? No. But it's a massive fig tree. And a dedicated cult known as the Circle of Stones cares for the tree. And the tree's resident dryad, Eulanthe. So that's Eastgate for you. Next up is the Foreign Quarter. It's basically away from home for many cultures and people who've immigrated to Absalom. It has a flair and characteristic of many foreign lands. The Grand Lodge of the Great Emorium is there, and the Grand Lodge of the Pathfinder Society. The Aurorium is an open-aired coliseum in the Foreign District. Non-lethal gladiatorial combat, mock sea battles, religious festivals, and many other events are the largest in the Inner-Sea region. So they do have gladiatorial combat, but non-lethal ones there. And it is basically a gigantic coliseum. Also, the Grand Lodge of the Pathfinder Society is there. Just, as a note, too. I mean, is that as important? Oh, I can kind of switch back images. As the, everything else about it? Maybe not, Just kind of in between the Ivy District and Wise Court District, Ascendant Court, and the Coins. It's kind of sandwiched in there. The lower tax for non-citizens in this section of the city have made it quite popular for immigrants from the rest of the Inner Sea region and beyond. Merchants with business in the area particularly find it attractive due to the elevated extensions of citizenry protection offered to any resident of the foreign quarter who has lived there more than 3 months. Each area of the city of this area has a distinct cultural exotic feel compared to the entire area as a whole. There's also the tavern Crimson Coin, which is nearby to the Aurorium. If you're going to go gamble at the Aurorium, go to the Crimson Coin. Gamblers, gladiators alike go there too. It's bustling trade player there. And also the Wounded Wisp, which is a bar for the Grand Lodge of the Pathfinder Society, is there too. Other places to check out. And Torment, that's a Grand Low Council. All right, let's talk about. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more districts. We've gone through most of these pretty quickly, and that's most of the stuff we can talk about today. We're going to be going through most of this today. Let's talk about the Ivory District. It's the capital of the arts in the Inner Sea. It's the smallest of the city districts. It derives its name for the tree-lined streets and attracts basically wealthier, more aristocratic demographic from the seedier parts of town. It's located on the bluffs near the harbor. I actually can also give an image of the Ivory District. I love it when I find these images here that I can quickly put together for these various districts and show them off that way. There's the Ivory District with a bunch of places marked off at it. There's manor homes, gardens, theaters, galleries, discreet parlor houses. It's got artists, minor nobles, actors. It is one of the safer parts of Absalom. There's not a lot of violent crime, and most of the Absalom's elven and half-elven population do tend to be here too. There's lighthearted rivalries between the local performers with mocking or belittling other artists and creations commonplace. Bardic feuds have arrived. The place is known for its breathtaking architecture, its gardens, fine artistic venues and attractions. Students and artists flock here to study from places like one of the most famous musical academies, the White Grottoes here. The Vault of Abadar, one of the gods' most holy churches, is also here, and a gnomish-run magic shop, the Laughing Sword, is another important part of this place here. The Ivory District Council is led by Nomarch Elian Always. It's quite corrupt. It's biased towards tourists and the Street Performers Actors Guild, which is non-coincidentally, or coincidentally if you want to pretend it is, led by Alan Always, the person in charge of the council. The Thistle Guard is the watch of the area, led by Captain Zerep Apul. It's infamous for its lackluster enforcement of district policies and a habit of turning blind eye to crimes committed by tourists. Though there is the Brothers of Abadar, a vigilante committee that kind of does what the guards don't. They're favored by locals and hired as private guards to a lot of events that happen there. So there are criminal organizations here, but not a lot of violent criminal. And a lot of entertainment there. It also boasts a population of Leshies in Absalom, the largest population. They sleep in trees and plants in local streets, local gardens, hired by the district's nobles as temporary and esoteric movable landscape decorations in their gardens. So you'll find Leshies there too. Not a huge population, as there's a huge one in the city, but most of them. All right. Let's talk about the Petal District, which is next. So, the Petal District is the wealthiest district in Absalom. Broad boulevards, extensive estates, institutions of higher learnings like the College of Mysteries find themselves there. It's in the northwestern part of Absalom, east of the Ascendant Court. It rests atop Water Cliff, and faces upon the rise of land known as Eridan's Hill. All the powerful noble families live there. It's got well-maintained rows of flowers that run down the center of almost every paved street, and framed in brick medians. Opulent palaces, decadent balconies, elaborate gardens, the rich and powerful are all here. There is also those that vie for power through poison and murder, as often as armistice and negotiation. And a lot of people seek to outdo the opulence of their neighbor's estate. Unlike other districts refer to their heads as nomarchs, they refer to their head as the satrap. So, another thing. College of Mysteries is there. That's a big one. There's also the Thuvian Embassy is found there. So the College of Mysteries, oldest school of magic in Absalom, has a reputation favored amongst a number of groups for enchanting weapons. It's basically an old magic college. Probably one of the biggest magic colleges that you'll find. In the world, probably, too. A very large one if you're going to visit there. The Restful Pathfinder's Lodge is, of course, a members-only Pathfinder retreat here, which is a really nice place if you are a member of the Pathfinder Society that and a little bit affluent. You can go to the Restful Pathfinder Lodge in the Petal District and spend a little bit of your extra money for like a nice smoke or drink. The Lantern Lodge, though, is in the Pathfinder District also, run by Venture Captain Amara Lee. So it's another location you can visit. And then there's the Thuvian Embassy there, of course, which I'll talk about Thuvi in the future, but they are a very rich country. So yes, that's a big thing about them. But that's the Petal District. We got 4 more we can talk about, and then we'll hit this. I might skip some of the things here, just to make it quicker. The points of interest. I can mention the points of interest. I mentioned poster probably, but probably most of them. So, the Precipice Quarter. It's basically a blighted district. It remains of the former Belden's Bluff, and the big earthquake that happened took most of the district into the harbor. Windstall Starborn has attempted to clean up the district, but 20 years of neglect, haunts, criminals, monsters alike are kind of not easy to dispose of. The district is on the mend, but there's a lot of work to do, basically. So, here's one of those areas that has some, like, stuff that's been updated from the previous books. There you go, some image of it. So that's why I'm going to say, like, I'll go over some basics here today, but this is another one that the second edition book has updated a lot of stuff on. Okay? Cool. So it was once the Belden's Bluff district. It's now the Precipice district. It used to have tea shops, minor governmental buildings, a few pleasure houses. The earthquake shook basically a chunk of the district, just plummeted into the sea. It became the poorest, most derelict, almost abandoned the city. The current leaders are trying to renovate it. They wanted to use it for the upcoming Radiant Festival in 4720. They did receive some significant results in the summer of 4720. But there's rumors of cutting costs, having problems, but it's removing a lot of the issue. It's one of the most dangerous districts. It's only sparsely populated. Hauntings, magical mishaps left over from research that was when it was Beldrin plague those that remain there. A lot of these rumors keep adventurers and pathfinders in the neighborhood to explore, brave the dangerous, and kind of take care of some of the issues. Many of the major things, I think, are gone. Let me check if any of these major locations still exist. There used to be the largest arboretum in from basically all of Galarian. Collapsed during the thing. Magic kind of spewed out. The plants kind of corrupted and either withered away or evolved into new abominations that have begun to plant it. So they had a big arboretum there. Went badly. Beldrin's Tower is still there. It's teetering at the cliff edge. It was a monument in the precipice corner. It used to be part of a 3-spire magic academy by the Wizard of Beldrum. The earthquake did a lot of damage, but it didn't destroy. It's on the cliff edge now, and it's kind of been refurbished a little bit. More than half the doors are still locked, sealed with false walls, or hidden by illusion magic, but it's kind of reopened. It still exists. There is the Titan's Fountain, which has reason for its names, and the Drown Yard. It was known as Tri-Towers Yard. It was a finishing school for children of rich and powerful. The quake destroyed the academy and all the students within, and also brought forth a spray from the sewer containing the remains of a previously unknown ancient necropolis over which the school had been built. So lower reaches of the Drown Yard access the old necropolis. It's a desolated ruin filled with salty brine and haunted by undead. Basically, the families of the dead erected a fence of black iron around the area to keep morbid intruders and archaeological groups out, but the Pathfinder Society has been permitted access to the area of the Drown Yard. Basically, a really nice school that everybody died at, but also it was built on top of a necropolis, because why the hell not? But that's the Precipice Corner, which is in such great shape. Or not. Let's talk about the Puddles. Nearly constantly flooded due to a combination of poor architectural choices and neglect, it's a slums, and it is the poorest of Absalom's districts. It was affected by the earthquake, like most of the city was. It caused the district to drop below sea level at high tide, so there's floods and eroding. The center of the district is now a festering lake known as Little Inner Sea. And the most businesses are calf deep in water, even at low tide. Most of the people that could leave did so. So the people that are left behind are addicts, criminals, the poor fend for themselves in an environment of derelict in their squalid lives. Misfortune, destitution are basically what you get there. It's inhospitable. There's lack of public funds. There's not really a lot of attention from the city watch. If you wish to prey on the weak, if you want to be part of the Thieves Guild, it's a place to go. There's a small tiefling ghetto. It's part of it. Unfortunately, it's probably one of the worst places in Absalom, the ghetto, but strangely enough, for tieflings, it's some of the most accepting places in all of Vastian. The goblins of the Crooked Toe tribe also arrived there and found themselves home. They settled in an abandoned playhouse in the western of the district. The few hardier members that have remained have transformed the district by building countless small bridges and ramps between its closely packed buildings to avoid flooded roads. These platforms are a network of rickety skyways that allow travelers to cross the district without even touching the ground, providing they have a good sense of balance. There are 3 places to mention that I will say here in the Puddles. The Brine. It's an imposing stone prison house located there. Most prisoners die there because, most prison cells are soaked with at least a foot of water and also raw sewage. So filth fever is very often. And the guards use elevated catwalks to stay out of the mucks. So prisoners stay in foul waters. Important individuals sent to Black Whale Prison. But, you're a lesser prisoner. You get to go to the Brine. So present. There's also the siphons, underground tunnels under the district that were once part of the sewer system that are now flooded. Though portions of it can be not flooded, and a great place for Thieves Guild and other criminals to locate themselves. And the Stilt House, a city-owned building in the Puddles that's headquarters of the Muck Ruckers, the city's guard here. Also headquarters of the Salvage Guild, and the nomarch of the Puddles District Council, and captain of the Muck Ruckers, and guildmaster of the Salvage Guild is always found there, Hailgan Topkick. So, the person in charge of the place is in charge of everything, because, God, it's not really great there. Westgate is a primary residential district, and not unlike Eastgate. It's quite a safe district where the residents largely keep to their own while biding time to make a run at getting into the Petal or Ivory districts. So merchants, shopkeeper, unbecoming citizens who can't quite afford the Petal or Ivory districts kind of live here. It is mostly residential, more so as you travel closer to the city walls, but there are some number of shops interspaced throughout. Some of the oldest families with lineage stretching back thousands of years still call this district their home. A lot of Absalom's traditions, this place is found to be the model of it. The Korthos Cavalry patrols the streets of Westgate as the Salty Guard. Osali Gate is the large fortress gates between, and it's the exit point between Westgate and the Puddles. It's a cavalry place. So yeah, the Korthos Cavalry is based out of the Sally Gate, and it's the city's only land-based mounted unit. And they do patrol the entire Korthos Island, but they also are particularly in Westgate, where they're the Sally Guard. You have to have steel armor, wear a sword, a wheeled sword, and a lance, but otherwise open to anybody that wants to join. Places of interest: the Fierce Stripe, a badger wrangling shop run by people. The Guild of Wonders, a centuries-old spy and assassin training school and organization. Yeah. And Statue Street, the site of the infamous Charge of the Gorgon. Which, to prevent overcrowding prison, offenders were allowed to particular race and outrun an enraged Gorgon. Many of them turned to stone. It's been recently outlawed. But a lot of the statues of former criminals are still lining the street. You know, they consider it unethical, but there's plenty that love that tradition and are not happy it was made illegal. You know, hey, criminals, if you can outrun this deadly stone-turning creature, you can get a pardon for your crime. Oh, very few of you lived. Well, our prisons have less prisoners as the ones that are like, probably minor crimes, more minor crimes got out. The other ones, a lot of them are just dead. So the Wise Quarter is the final quarter to talk about today. It is, the Ivy District is Arts and Entertainment District. The Wise Quarter is the mind of it, almost. Housing industries such as the Arcandium, the Bracros Museum, the Fortes Logos. It's a center of scholarship and governments for the entire city as the whole. The Arcandium, being the largest and oldest school, is more of it's a more arcane magical academy, and probably one of the most prestigious. So there's these two large magical academies there. The Balcros Museum, former stronghold of the mad astrologer and wizard named Raklos the Overwatched. It is a structure with incredible museum collection. And then the Forte Logos, the Wise House, the Library of Korthos, is the largest library in the city, and one of the most extensive archive of written texts west of the pit of Gormaz. which is it. Which is the thing. Oh my god, the Tarrasque rising out of the pit. That's an image to start with that one there. Anyway. So most of the government buildings are located here. The residents of the Primarch and the Grand Council are here. So scholars, philosophers from all over the world congregate here to research, debate topics known to any mortal. And Silk Castle's here, the only kite shot within 1,000 miles of the city. The Wise Council guards over it. The meeting halls of the Grand Council, along with the residents of the Primarch, is located here as well. So the Wise Council are the ones that run it. Alright, now we have talked about Absalom in that way. We should talk about its history. Just a little bit. We have been live for quite a long one, and this was a big one. This will end up being bigger. Here's one of those towers I mentioned earlier that we briefly kind of talked about. The Aeon Towers. Here's an Aeon Tower. Relates to the history, so I put a picture of it here. So the city was founded in 1 AR when Aroden raised the star sign out of the depths of the sea. Oh, is that supposed to be this one? Oh no, I didn't do this one. I skipped over points of interest because I think I was going to do points of interest. I talked about most of these. The most of the points of interest are these things. I think the only other thing I want to mention is Rovga's Hall, and then Korthos. So yeah, that is one of the towers. The towers are the major sites that we could talk about. The Aeon Towers. Here we go. Here's Aroden raising the city out of the sea. There we go. All right. It was raising the Starstone from the depths. The stone which, if you followed its test, you became a deity. Basically, the whole cloth creation allowed for quick inhabitation, and Aroden took the best and bravest throughout the Inner Sea region to protect the Darstone and prevent it from moving it. Absalom's tactical position in the middle of countless trade routes and undeniable influence. Many ambitious nations, greedy warlords, have set their sights upon the walls of the city over the millennia, and it hasn't been really easy, but, like, besieging armies have constantly came, many have fought, and few have had any kind of success. So for the history of the city could fill libraries, you know. There's a lot that's unrecorded. So, Aroden used to be Aslanti mortal. He raised the Starstone from the depths of the Inner Sea in 1 AR and became the focus of the city. He's known as the last Aslanti. Whether he actually created the island or just raised the stone to that's a subject of debate. But the records earlier than 1450 AR are sparse at best. So, Aroden didn't perform his task alone and spoke little of it. So Aroden performed his task alone, raising the Starstone, and spoke little of it afterwards. Record of the first few centuries in Absalom are spotty. The founding laws of Absalom are written in a stone within Aslanti Keep, but no other original documents really survive. And 4 millennia of mold, ancient and possible intentional sabotage have destroyed every book scroll kept before 400 AR. So basically, 400 AR is kind of the cutting point of we don't know anything before that. Copies of copies, each claiming to represent an original text, can be found throughout the city, but they rarely agree with each other. The first millennia of Absalom's history is a lot more mythology than anything. Most of the people he called for came from Taldor, province of Chelax, Aroden, though Osirian, Caldrian, Thuvian all came in. It drew on cultures of nations to identify itself, creating its own one. And a lot of the city's noble houses will actually trace their origin back to various other regions in the Inner Sea. So, one of the major things are the centuries of siege, which we'll talk a little bit about here. There's too many to discuss. But basically, its influence and location the promise of immortality from the Starstone, because the Starstone can be used for a test to become a god. Aroden was the first one to pass it and become a god. You know, have led so many ambitious nations and warlords to try to siege the city. For centuries, it was almost constantly besieged by one army or another, each attempting to bring Absalom to its knees. The city has never fallen. There's sunken warships in the harbor, island Korthos there. Oh, I didn't talk about the one district I wanted to talk about, which I forgot. Where is that? Was that outside the docks I can talk about? There's one more thing I want to talk about. But we'll finish the history and then we'll go back to that. Because I just remembered something we did not discuss that was maybe talked about in the docks. Which would have been an important one to mention. Oh, the Flotsam Graveyard. Yeah. I did want to talk about the Flotsam Graveyard. Anyway, we'll finish the history first, though. So, Warlord Vorlane Voon was the first unsuccessful siege in 23 AR, known as the First Siege of Absalon. In 166 AR, the mage Nex assailed Aslan with his armies. Aroden himself indirectly guides the defenders. The Pirate Siege of 430, a confederacy of pirates from across the Inner Sea who took advantage of Aroden's recent departure, tried it. In 1298, the Postern Gate was nearly breached by the Siege of Prophets. Starwatch Keep was built specifically in response to the crisis the assault created. Siege of Prophets was attacked by the Prophet Kings. Yep. That's why it was called there. There was the unsuccessful Reborn Rebellion led by Gara of Halfan. Marred in the year 1464, which Reborn Rebellion was basically the leaders of a group. It was against the leaders of Absalom to create a new nation, basically to get rid of the leadership of the city. There was the Radiant Siege in 1619 AR, led by Karnas the Angel Binder. In 2850, the Archlords of Nex unleashed the Conjured Siege upon them. They eventually still won against Absalom Prepared. Yep. Let's see here. There was in 36-37, the Numerian machine mage Karamos assaulted Absalom, constructing a huge metal citadel with alien technology. The city was besieged by metal automations until they were defeated by the city's druidic order. Alien technology there. Ras Jahan, a self-styled necromancer king, assailed Absalom and the undead army in 3692. For her seventh miraculous act, the then mortal Iomedae called upon the Starstone to light the city through a terrible storm. It allowed defenders of Absalom to halt a vicious attack from sea ghouls that invaded. This occurred in the 3800s. In the early 40th century AR, Taldor attempted a military operation called Silent Tide, which Taldan agents would infiltrate the city, cripple several vital targets, and signal for the Taldan Navy to begin a siege proper. Plot was foiled before the signal was given, and technically not a siege. The Chelish siege occurred in 4137, failed to take Absalom. The Cheliks almost certainly harmed the city's trade by taking possession of the Arches of Aroden, thereby restricting trade to the city. So the Arches of Aroden have been in control of Chelish since then. During the Fiendish Siege of 4717, the Pathfinder Society helped the city defend against attack by demons and undead forces under Thrul. Thrul being a former adventure captain who went all evil, corrupted by demonic forces. And then 4719, Tar-Baphon attempted to claim the Starphone after he got free. Great group of heroes, cough, 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 a.k.a. the PCs in that adventure, tricked him in turning his weapon, the Radiant Fire, on himself. The blast consumed him, but left behind a wasteland dubbed the Tyrant's Grasp. He survived. So those are just some of the many sieges, the most historical ones to mention that we can talk about. Basically, other than our friend Aroden, who ascended using the Starstone, only 3 that have come for the test of the Starstone have successfully done it. Norgabur in 1893, Caden Killian on a drunk bet in 2765. Don't ask about that one. Caden's a really interesting deity. He got drunk, went in a bet, and became a god. Norgabur secrets. And Iomedae in 3832, who was a servant of Aroden and has sort of tried to take his place as best she could, post him disappearing. Thousands have attempted. The followers of Ascended, along with the cults of those who failed, have added to the thriving religious community in Absalom. So basically, people that succeeded, great. So, you know, with slaves getting freedom, it's still that there was a huge history of slavery as a subject in Absalom. It was looked down upon in upper-class neighborhoods. So that's an important part about this. In the upper class, slavery was looked out. The law still allowed it, and there were things like the flesh taxes that were reinstated in 4635, being effectively like legalized slavery that used some pretty terrible means. Misery Row was the big place in the coins. Slaves didn't really come from Absalom. They were brought from outside, generally. Most were criminals or those that had excessive debt. Most of the time. So, again, these were kind of the ways things were. But that fiendish siege when the slaves gained their freedom, which hasn't been that long, honestly, it was 2 years before Tar-Baphon tried his thing, has given them freedom. So, and again, like, it was that weird thing that, like, the true upper class basically looked down on it. The people that were rich was like, we don't need to do that, but it was still legal and used by a lot of dark and shady people in the city. So, it being removed has definitely changed things, and honestly, for the better. The past century has been pretty big. There was rioting and violence in the streets after the death of the former Primarch, who was strongly influenced by the Cheliacs. And then Lord Gear of House Gix stepped into the power void and used his own troops and personal influence and calmed the city, basically established an equilibrium. And it was in 4660 he was elected Primarch of it. Then there was the 4698 where the earthquake rocked the city, sunk the Petals believed sea level. Principat's Quarter was destroyed. The place that was known as the Beldrin's Bluff. And the disaster's repercussions are still being felt throughout the city. Because it's been only, like, honestly, 20 years since a major earthquake rocked the entire city? So, Absalom has seen its share of troubles. And certainly, as I said, if you want to really look into them, that new book is probably the best place to get all the information, which I did want to mention, circling back for just a second, the Flotsam Graveyard, which is speckled a large field of shipwrecks that pose a hazard to shipping through Absalom's harbor, but also serves to protect the southern port of the city from foreign navies. No ship that carries more than 6 people or 500 pounds of cargo may sail through the Flotsam Graveyard, helmed by its own pilot. Instead, a trained helmsman of the harbor master Grange must direct the craft through the hazard. The graveyard is patrolled by the Pilots Guild, which alone knows the safe route through the Tangled Refuge. The Star Watch, which protects the city from its headquarters on the cliffs above. And, of course, the Wave Riders, the Hippocampus Worms. So, not really a district. It's near the docks and kind of part of it. But there's a pilot island there where the lighthouse is. When we were looking at the image from before of this one here, which has it down at the bottom. There's the city, symbol of the city of Absalom. We're nearly done here. Let's briefly talk about the government of Absalom. And then we'll talk about a little bit of the economy of Absalom. And then we'll talk a little bit about the inhabitants of Absalom. So it's ruled by a Grand Council, which is chaired by Primarchs. Lord Gear of House Gix is technically the current leader of it. We'll talk about that. It has 12 high seats, including the Primarchs, and a variable number of low seats. The administration positions are filled by members of the council. More sought-after titles going to members of the High Council. Position of Primarch is held for life and decided by the High Council. It has additional privileges unique to the position, granting the holder a considerable power over the council. By corollary, the city itself. The day-to-day administration is handled by the district councils of Absalom, which are headed by Nomarch, and it was appointed by the Low Council with approval of the Primarch. So there you go. So the founding laws are a big thing. It's erected by Arad himself. They're the history of that. Currently, the Grand Council, of course. Well, the thing is, Gear of House Grix has been missing, and Weinsoul Starborn has been the acting Primarch since he disappeared about 6 years ago in 4717. He's just been absent. He vanished during the Fiendish Siege, and Divination Magic doesn't reveal anything other than he still lives. So he's still alive, just no one knows where he's at. Like, that's what Divination Magic will say. So, attaining a high seat requires nothing more than showing one of the 12 magical cornucopias, which act as seals of the office at an annual meeting. They're held by powerful merchants, religious figures, member of the aristocracy. Lower council will decide annually by high council votes, and members of low council typically hold minor, unglamorous bureaucratic positions. They come from prominent families, prominent office holders. So you get like they kind of like have these higher groups that decide the lower groups, kind of, in a way. Big matters of state are to the Ground Council from the Grand Council Hall. They rarely decide on small number of citywide matters. Basically, mostly if it's something related to foreign affairs, they'll get involved in it. And local districts tend to be on their own. But it's just, if it's district-to-district stuff, they can kind of get involved with it. And then each district is represented by the Low Council, by at least one seat, and each district is represented by the Low Council, by at least one seat, and each of Absalom's vassal cities also receives 2 seats. So, appointed by the government. And a number of low seats are handed out to whoever's duties the High Council finds very useful. So basically, the current Absalom High Council has the 12 seats, including the Primarch, and then the Low Council has 49 members, making the entire Grand Council 61 seats. So again, that Low Council is a member kind of from each of the districts, and then the people from the various cities that work under work under Absalom. But the ones that are from the various cities are basically appointed by their governments, you know. Yeah. So it is a pretty active group of things. We do know the names of some Primarchs. Of course, right now, Weinsoul Starborn is the acting Primarch after Gear has disappeared. But there was Seabib, who was of House Starkeeves from around 4606 to around 4959, the one who had Gear replaced. And we know around 2850 was Dance, and from 1997 to 2849, at some point between there was Willis of House Lorraine. Again, we don't know a lot about them. I talked about most of the district councils. The law lords oversee the judicial system. Each of the 4 law lords is a judge in their own rights, outranking any magister, with the ability to make stacked judgments on the soft, serving justice, and otherwise require trial. There's also spell lords, which advise the Primarch and the High Council in matter of eldritch importance, and govern the use of magic in the city, including the Absalom's magical defenses, regulating magical academies, and placing limits on experimentation. I talked about all the different watches, the Grey Cloaks, Token Guards, Harbor Guards, Post Guards in Eastgate, Sleepless Suns in the Foreign Quarter, Thistle Guards in Ivory District, Lotus Guards in Petal District, Muckruckers in Puddles, Sally Guards in Westgate, Learned Guards in Wisegate, and Principal District has no watch right now, so sucks to be them. but it does have a complicated web of military and law enforcement. First Guard serves as Absalom's army. They man the city's walls and gates and forts to protect it from external threats. Starwatch is a military intelligence law enforcement organization in Starwatch Keep. They are the ones that enforce the council's decree and investigate crimes that go cross district lines and misconduct by the city's other military and law enforcement groups. The Navy, of course, is very important ones with its various groups. And there are other government officials that happen there. So there's a lot of politics that happen in the government of Absalom. We are almost done here. A little bit more. With this nice picture of Absalom as a whole. Let's do this one, because it's a little bit bigger. Turn that one off. Thank you. So, let's talk a little about the economy. Its wealth is driven by its trade, of course. So a lot of policies favor commerce and the own interest of the city's rulers. But there's a very laissez-faire approach to regulation. Taxes are light, though siege taxes during war times can be much higher. There's no property tax, but you are charged access to roads sometimes, sanitation, other public infrastructure. There's modest tax on foreign merchants, fees for pilots through the flats and graveyards, docking fees, usually supply a lot of the city's basic needs. There are three basic parts of the economy: craftsmen, who manufacture goods; traders, who buy and sell physical goods; laborers, provide services. The craftsmen and laborers are organized into guilds that provide legal and illegal products and services. Traders are prohibited from organizing to prevent collision and fixing prices. The city's laws require that goods to be sold must be owned by a single merchant who may operate a single commercial outlet for them. That's the way the laws say it. Goods are sold by a single merchant operated by a single commercial outlet. Their currency consists of pennies, silver weights, crests, gold measures, and platinum sphinxes. They commonly trade with other cities: Alamas, Casimir, Cathries, Nishuan, Okena, Operetta, Orgent, Otensa, and Sothis. They have varying relations and regulations concerning trade from different people. And other people kind of have different views of Absalom's ships and stuff like that. Ships as far as TNZ do show up there. And they act as a hub for sending things across the inner sea. Beasts of burden are important. Regular bench wagons allow commerce riders to travel around town for a copper. Halfling porters with dog travails can be hired for a similar price. Horses are rare on the island. So camels are the big things. Camels are used by farmers. Drones of them pull wagons and chariots. Many district guards actually have camel cavalry. Camel barding is the most commonly available than barding for horses. Axe beaks are also a very common one. They are a little faster and better to defend themselves than camels, but again, they are more meat eaters. But dogs, lizards, elephants, and monstrous centipedes can also be found. Hackmont House, before the establishment of Hackmont House, saddle and tack had to be custom ordered for dozens of shops. Hackmore House is a good place to get a lot of these things. The most important goods that come from here are lumber, of course, as I talked about, oyster beds for pearls, iron mine from the mountains, and sky metals are a big thing, actually, that do happen around here. Also, a lot of things like shellfishes, oysters, clams, scallops, crabs, and lobsters are something that the city is very well known for. And one last little section to talk about before we are done. I'm going to look at the harbor there in the city. So, who lives there? I'm going to keep this a little bit short because a lot of people live here. Basically, it's home to basically every conceivable type of individual could be here. It is primarily human settlement, but members of every ancestry, religion, or homeland can be seen in and under the streets of the city. Specific demographics for each individual, but there are few, if any, people who are not represented in the cities. Like the Gilman and travelers from other plane. Gilman, who deal with pretty much no one else, and planar inhabitants will show up here. The bravest nobles, merchants, and adventurers were the first to come to this place. So they have this huge influence from major nations, as I talked about. Kelish and Osarian are spoken just as much as Caldane here. Halflings are the second largest ancestry in the city next to humans. So it's one of the main halfling settlements in all the Inner Sea. And halflings from many countries come to here to join the community. They have districts, the Coins, Eastgates, and the Foreign Corridors. There are a few that live and travel to the puddles where the height of the water, because the height of the water can be dangerous to them. Elves are one of the more uncommon ones. So most of the adventurers and outcasts live here. Half-elf descendants are the most common here. So yeah. And a lot of groups that live here organize themselves into houses, which are basically clans organized by original origin. So, basically, the big gods, the four extended gods, Eredin, Norgabur, Cayden Cailean, and Imoday, are the most common in Absalom, but there are churches, shrines, and temples to countless other deities, major ones being Abadar, Nethys, Sarenrae, Clistre, Iri, Shaelin. It's one of the few civilized cities where worship of Norgabur is tolerated. He ascended there, so it kind of is tolerated, even though he's kind of a dick. That kind of services and items I talked about that are just here because of that. Because of the variety of houses, guilds, and religious and martial orders and other organizations, all with these different symbolisms, there's a lot of different symbolism that can occur here. There are a number of common symbols to the city, though. The city's colors are gold and yellow, which is the same as the Starstone, are gold and yellow for the Starstone, and green for the sea and the island's lush pastures. The mascots are Hippocanthus, representing naval power, the sea cavalry, and the Mother Sphinx is imported from Osirian. The Mother Sphinx is typically presented as a winged lion with a human head, upper body, occasionally shown as pregnant, astride a wave, or with human hands holding a scale and serpent scroll. The city's motto is Ex Prophetex, which interpreted to mean from the first or first among equals. It's also called as I said earlier, Patchwork City or City of Buried Treasures because of its patchwork culture. And I am dropping mic. Boom. We've gone over it all. Woo! This was a big one. 2-hour mark here for me. All right. That's Absalom for you. It's a very important city. That's why it was important to talk about. You know, it is the largest metropolis in pretty much all of Golarion, and it functions very much so at the center of this. As I say, this is the city at the center of the world for obvious reasons. And its history is a very interesting one. Its place is a very interesting one, and certainly countless adventures can not only be easily put in this place, but can start there or lead there. Or so much stuff around it is this like section of both intrigue and insanity and culture and people from all over that just makes it such an interesting place. It's another reason I kind of wanted to talk about it because it is so interesting. I've been trying to figure out like different places, different kind of places to talk about of these, but I don't think I have anything else to summarize because I'm tired and my brain's kind of fried a little bit after speaking about this for 2 hours, and I've ran out of iced tea and my water's about halfway done, so I'm going to drink another big drink out of that as we finish up here. Refreshing water. It keeps you alive. Anyway, I'll give my outro now. I don't know if I have much else to say about Absalom, but it's a very interesting place. It is the melting pot of the entire world at the center of it. And if you're insane enough, you can try to become a god. It probably won't work, but you could try. You could go on a drunk bet. It worked for Cayden Cailean. But that man was insane. And he's still a drunk god now. Well, he's still drunk, but he's also a god now. Anyway, if you're looking for more tabletop, I stream these talks live on Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays over at Twitch TV/Dracovan Empire. If you're watching this on YouTube, great! Hi, welcome! You can also watch it there, where I will dive deep into this crap for you. Remember, then you can follow YouTube, follow Twitch, subscribe, comment YouTube. Those are great things. It's usually around early afternoon on Tuesdays, Thursdays, or late morning on Saturdays. I have Buccaneers Shackled Sea, my live Pathfinder game where we're in Golarion. If you want to see some live play in this world setting on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. EST. Saturdays discussing tabletop is a thing to check out. Discord and Twitter is a great place to see what the fuck I'm doing all the time and what my brain farts that I kind of say occasionally. Keep up at 9. Man, have conversations with me if you want to ask me anything about tabletop, or you can just do it in the description below here too. It's all these things. Give me comments or descriptions. Anyway, I'm going to run away now because I want to use the bathroom. I have some things to do, and it's a lot later than I thought it was going to be. Happens. Anyway, farewell everybody. All of you have a great day.